Greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Bob Brown, the CEO of ProHawk AI. I'm happy to see you all on the call, the webinar with us today. We're honored and pleased to have a few of our colleagues on the call at ProHawk and a couple of our esteemed partners over at Dell Technologies, Chris Thomas, and NVIDIA, Chris Ruffing. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us and participating and providing an opportunity for people to learn more about AI, the Dell AI Factory, NVIDIA, and ProHawk AI, and the types of things that we can do together to help solve customers' problems. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Willis. Brent Willis, our COO at ProHawk. You can take it away.
Thanks, Bob. And I'm actually just going to pass off to CT to talk about how Dell is underpinning all of these new solutions for the government. CT?
No, appreciate that, Bob. Appreciate that, Brent. So thanks, everybody, for joining. My name is Chris Thomas. I go by CT. I am a technology director for emerging technologies here at Dell Technologies, focused on our global defense. As a part of that, the joy that I get is dealing with all the, I guess you'd say, the new buzzwords from 5G to zero trust to AI and machine learning. As a part of that, we started looking at supporting our government agencies and supporting just the ecosystem as a whole and providing solution outcomes that are where the actual mission and business that takes place, which is typically at the edge. So we've looked at the concept of that federated mission edge as a part of this. So depending on your organization and agency, right, we feel that it makes more sense, right, to bring the AI to where the data is already existing. And we've created this framework, which is our Dell AI Factory. The Dell AI Factory is our overall and comprehensive strategy and approach to AI and machine learning. As a part of this, we look at what does a customer or a business partner need from a use case perspective to make the biggest impact. As a part of that, we start to look at what KPIs, how do we measure success, right? That differs per organization, what type of risk and compliance perspective comes in. And as a part of that, you start looking at the data. Where's that data located, right? That's what feeds your AI factory. And you're going to have to refactor your traditional data centers and move from what we've done in the past. Now, going from there, once we've identified those, what I'd say bookends, we start to look at, do we have ecosystem partners that can fulfill some of those needs? A lot of this, where we worked with, partners like NVIDIA and ProHawk, is we have turnkey ISV-based solution sets that you can, purchase from Dell and get started quickly, right? And make an immediate impact so time to value. And then going beyond that, now we can start to look at what infrastructure components you actually need to make this a reality. Is this super users where you just need to install some software or equipment on maybe a precision laptop? Do you need a small server? Do you need an actual full data center scale, rack scale solution set to do training or inference at scale with a number of concurrent users? And then on top of that, we start to augment, right, to ensure success with our services team. So we work with our partners, we work with our internal services team to do a lot of that integration, right? Remove that integration burden for customers and ensure that project success. We've seen a number of these AI projects start, and if they don't have a clear-cut plan as to what use cases, how they're going to measure success, do they have visibility to the data, what we've seen is most of those projects are not that successful, or they have massive growing pains. And we want to try to avoid that best we can. So as we look ahead and really kind of decouple and understand how you maybe gauge those use cases, you see everything from cybersecurity, resource optimization, document management, right? And this could just be knowledge base. You look at fraud, waste, abuse, if you're doing any point of sale type of use cases or warehouses. You even look at simulations for model-based system engineering, right? Leveraging maybe NVIDIA's Omniverse solution sets, digital twins, et cetera. And I know everybody has heard, right, generative AI. And yes, that is very new, very emerging for a lot of us. But you also have, traditional AI, right? Some of the predictive maintenance, right, where you're using discriminative AI at the edge in a warehouse, or doing computer vision at the edge to determine, I'll keep it simple, how many red shirts have walked by this, inspection point within a certain period of time. Those are things that we've been able to do, but now you're able to take both discriminative and generative AI, or even predictive analytics, and tie them all together into a larger system of systems. And this is where it comes back to where you look at your data management policy, right? Whether or not you're doing ETL or ELT, and that's really dependent upon the use case. You also start to look at how do you establish transparency, right, and predictability within your actual AI decisions. Um, that's a huge risk for a lot of companies and organizations to understand how did the AI come to that conclusion. And we've worked with partners in order to make that a reality, right? To give you that transparency and observability within the AI solution itself. And then obviously, right, what's foundational is Dell's infrastructure as a part of that, building on top of that foundation. So as we start to look through, right, how does AI Factory become a reality, right? So we talked about the data, right? And that's what's feeding the AI Factory itself. You have your AI, whether or not they're discriminative or you're just running analytics, business intelligence, et cetera, or doing something that's generative or a combination thereof. And then what is the actual value, right? What is the value proposition? Now, everybody thinks it's those basic three big blocks, and you're like, hey, we can get started. We have enough to go and position to our leadership team, and we'll make something happen. But in reality, you start looking at that there's a lot of, sub functions within each one of those major categories from data, right? Selecting good and quality data, right? Is it in the right format? Looking at where you're sourcing that from, so where your data pipelines are really coming. Do you have enough data to train that model or augment that? So you may have to do some actual synthesizing as a part of it. You start getting into the actual data engineering construct, right? And this is where this really gets fleshed out in the details. Looking at cleaning in what that hygiene actually looks like. How does it scale? Do I need to move some data? Do I need to create temporary databases? Or am I looking at relationship-based databases, or am I looking at something that's structured or unstructured data format? So all these things come into play, and then figuring out how you're going to actually tune that and refine it. You also look at how do you measure that success, and that has to be something that's continuous, right? It feeds into your CI/CD pipeline as a whole. Um, Now, as a part of this, right, we're dealing with a system of systems. You also have to take into context what legal, ethical consideration need to be taken into place, and any historical biases that may have been seen, right? You may only have a subset of data that was done, let's just say theoretically, right, one region of the United States, right, northeast, southeast, et cetera. Well, that's not holistic if you're running a company that does business globally, et cetera. So you have to take that into consideration as you're moving forward. And then obviously security, right? The biggest piece that we found with a number of different customers, when you start talking about finance, HR, or some of the things that are critical from an intellectual property perspective on how they handle operations and deliver outcomes day to day to their customers, that security becomes critical. And that's where the edge becomes more prevalent, right? They want to make sure that they can protect that data, have visibility into that data, have the transparency to understand the outcome without it being and introducing new risk. That's one thing that we've seen a lot of companies and organizations have to try to avoid. And we think we've created a framework and partner ecosystem that makes that a reality, and even able to create, small POCs and get things started to really flush out the details, bring all the stakeholders within an organization together to make those decisions and ensure project success as we go use case by use case and move the needle forward. So as we start to look at this, and this is just a quick snapshot as, right, some of our end-to-end portfolio, right, the different infrastructure components we had, right, being able to right size your AI investment from an infrastructure perspective, bringing in multiple ecosystem partners, and in some cases, depending on the use case and how complex, we may bring in multiple partners. We'll bring in NVIDIA and ProHawk, and maybe we bring in another partner that brings in an on-prem LLM. And these all can work and integrate together. And that's where we're working together with our ecosystem to de-risk that integration burden for our partners. And that's how we create these Dell DVDs, or Dell Validated Designs, and validated solutions for blueprints that customers can take, order from that bill of materials. And then we have subject matter experts, right, within our services division and teams that can come help you actually implement and do a workshop with you to figure out where that data is located. Is it able to be used today, right? How do you actually do that in maybe a distributed edge format? So more than happy and willing to work with our partners and, right, and ensure customer success as a part of this. Moving forward. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Ruffing from NVIDIA, which he's tolerated and worked with me for a number of years now. Hopefully he doesn't get rid of me anytime soon. But Chris, over to you.
Man, I'm the whole reason he'd change his name and go to CT, so we wouldn't be confused in at the same room. But no, hey, thanks, CT, man. Always good to see you and appreciate it. I'm kind of the scrub off the bench here. My solution architect decided to take his family on a cruise, so I'm filling in here. I want to kind of be the transition and just talk a little bit about NVIDIA and the partnership that we have with Dell, and that's my focus. I'm located here in Texas, close to the Dell mothership. I've been around Dell more than 20 years, and here with NVIDIA for 5+. But I focus on the Dell Federal relationship, and my sole purpose in being is really making sure the strength of NVIDIA is behind Dell Federal and all that we do. And I think CT did a great intro in really showing what Dell is doing, and I just kind of want to touch on that a little bit, and then we'll transition over to Brent to talk about what ProHawk's doing. But kind of on that note, from an NVIDIA perspective, with ProHawk, even before they kind of joined the Dell ecosystem, NVIDIA has what we call our Inception program, where we look for partners, startups, people out there in the world that are using the goodness of NVIDIA, the GPU, actually the software, right, and doing cool new things. And ProHawk brought into our Inception program, and then they started coming into the Dell ecosphere, and that's when Brent and I crossed paths, I don't know, a year or so ago, I guess, and we started seeing each other and understanding what we were doing good together. But that's kind of the neat thing with NVIDIA behind the large OEM like Dell. But really, NVIDIA perspective, even though we're out there in the marketplace, and everybody hears us from young kids to grandmothers these days, really we're still a small company, and we really get behind OEM, our largest OEM partner, Dell, to really help get NVIDIA out into the marketplace and really work on the solutions that CT was talking about. And that's a big part of what I do. So I'm part of the global team that supports Dell from an NVIDIA perspective. We also have an army of people with Dell badges that help support NVIDIA, and really focus on giving Dell all the resources, from designing in GPUs, and networking, the hardware, into Dell solutions. And we've got software experts and additional technical resources that get behind and really build out the Dell AI Factory that CT was just talking about. And we need Dell to really scale out there into the global marketplace, so we can go and have conversation. Jensen can get on stage and talk about the goodness and the cool things, that the shiny objects that are coming. Right, it's really myself and CT sitting down with a bunch of other smart people at Dell, and then partners like ProHawk, to really drive the solutions. And Brent's going to talk about those here shortly, into the customer's environment, to help you all with day-to-day challenges. And so, this is just a slide we kind of put together just to talk about that partnership. And this is my take. I know CT kind of just went through and kind of talked about, from a Dell perspective, the AI Factory. And this is kind of my slide, where I talk and showcase. It's got our nice Dell and NVIDIA colors kind of coming together. But CT went into a little more detail, but really it's the NVIDIA hardware and the software that we've got, the GPUs, networking, that are really bringing the solution together with Dell. You said it's even starting at the client, even though we focus on the sexy enterprise solutions. We've got plenty of POCs going on that I'm helping Dell sellers out into the environment and the customer into the Fed space. That are built around laptops and desktops with GPU in them. So we don't have to build out a data center to start solving using AI to solve your problems. And so I do like to mention that as well. But this is the general overview slide that my whole team talks about when we really talk about the Dell NVIDIA solution. So I want to kind of make that quick, Brent, and really, we wanted to give this to you to really talk about what ProHawk is doing with Dell and NVIDIA. So thanks again for having me today.
It's perfect. And thank you, CT, and thanks, Chris. And, we're just going to share one of those solutions that Dell and NVIDIA are bringing to all of our federal and law enforcement customers. And this one particular Ready Now solution, all it simply does is convert night today, but does so at the critical moment in time. And so what you're seeing on the left and the right is the exact same video with about a 3 millisecond delay. So a blink of an eye is 16 milliseconds. So it's imperceptible to the human eye. And it doesn't just overcome night, it overcomes any environmental obstacle for sun glare, as you see here. And because it's fundamentally different, pixel by pixel, we can take out every single snowflake or every single raindrop or particulate matter for harbor safety, for aerospace safety, to see power lines, for manufacturing safety. Fog is another difficult thing that typically impedes LiDAR from functioning, let's say, because of the particulates. For us, it's just another form of particulate matter that we take out, or rain. Think about autonomous driving. It's fantastic in perfect conditions, but when it starts to rain or when it's night, it just doesn't work. And what you're seeing here on the left is a UAV and a $2 million FLIR sensor on the left, and what we do to it on the right. And I think this is one of the key reasons why we were selected to be deployed across all major cities in a Northern European conflict zone, which we're not going to talk about. So that's really what the technology does, and does it real time. The issue is there's really two issues. One, customers don't know about it. And number two, the paradigm from every single federal customer I talk to is, let's solve the problem with hardware, because that's what we know. That's what we have known. Let's just put in new cameras or change our cameras from 480 to 1080 or whatever. And every US Army vehicle has about 6 cameras on it, right? So look, those cameras work in perfect conditions, but that's just not real world. And replacing those cameras are expensive, both in terms of the hardware cost and the implementation cost. And it's still just in typical, either an optical sensor or LiDAR or radar or FLIR that has its limitations. It isn't going to extend the range. And sometimes, especially with optical sensors, you run the risk of false positives. And of course, it's very expensive. And on the software side, it just hasn't been available, or it hasn't worked. Or it's been small companies, or essentially Indian or Chinese owned. And those are the principal other technologies out there. So there hasn't been a solution until now. And now this is a fundamentally different solution that, thanks to Dell and NVIDIA, we can bring to our customers. And what we do is we take that same video, we find a target pixel where there's data, we go inside that pixel, look at all the concentric pixels around that, and then we do that 33 million times every 3 milliseconds to fundamentally transform the image and gain actionable insights. So it's simple math, simple algorithms, but importantly, it's facts. It's actual restoration of actual pixels that are there. So there is no Gen I interpretation. So from a military standpoint, this passes the requirements for rules of engagement for targets. Those other technologies on the hardware side or the software side, they're called adaptive histogram or contrast limited adaptive histogram. And what they did was they looked at that entire frame or that entire video, and they averaged out values to marginally improve or overcome one obstacle. What this technology does, as I just mentioned, it goes inside an individual pixel, optimizes within that pixel, and then optimizes all of the pixels across the entire image. And so it's kind of like the difference between a QLED TV and a 1950s black and white TV. Those other technologies are typically manual, where you got to do all sorts of adjustments and take 2 to 3 minutes and require special hardware. This is 3 milliseconds and deployable edge to enterprise. The implementation of this is also plug and play and no code. So there isn't any 6 months of software engineering for integration, and that correlates to lowest total cost. And of course, with this partnership with NVIDIA and Dell and our distribution partners underpinning it, coupled with a 100% US owned and technically developed solution, it meets all the requirements for ITAR that we want for protection in the United States. And guess what? The threat environment is changing. And so it's more important now than it's ever been to get that early warning system and that advanced warning system on a critical threat, to see at extended range, to say, look, 2 miles out, that's a flock of 24 birds, or that's 24 class one UASs, likely with ordnance on it. And again, to be able to see that over any environmental obstacle and any real world obstacle like smoke obscurity or battlefield obstacles, such that you can make a decision and get real world analytics at the critical moment in time to make a difference in saving lives. So just quickly on the tech, there's 5 things that make it different. Number 1, unmatched clarity, real time, pixel by pixel. Number 2, it's TRL9 because the team built all the industry standard interfaces that make it no code and plug and play. 3, we have had the character building experience of working with some of the most recalcitrant, obstreperous, challenging character building customers on the planet. Those are all the big words I know. But that really tested our mettle, right? And so we own it and we have these fantastic solutions proven, as I mentioned, cloud, client, server, or edge deployable. And we couldn't do it on our own. We couldn't do it without our distribution partners or our other key reseller partners. But together we can bring this new solution. So let's just talk about a couple of proof points, right? We need this real-time video restoration, and importantly, we say restoration versus enhancement, because enhancement implies a degree of changing or altering of the evidence. We do not do that. We restore the actual pixels. And I just remember when I was, from my military time, if I could have seen this on the right versus what is actual incoming on the left, it could have made a real difference. But, across industries, whether it's healthcare, perimeter protection, manufacturing, you name it, you need that real-time video restoration insight. And just quickly, this technology works across the electromagnetic spectrum. This is just one example on the medical side where you see here this X-ray on the left. And because we're just looking at contrast and reflection and refraction on different kinds of inputs, whether it's X-ray, LiDAR, FLIR, or whatever, we can bring out all of that visual detail at the critical moment in time, like you see here on this medical video for those of you that are about to have lunch or breakfast. We measure, just a joke, we measure everything, and these are actually NVIDIA's numbers from the exhaustive character building labs that they put us through. Dell did the same thing. But basically, the technology allows us to see 22 times farther, 80 times faster, 16 times more total objects with significant increased confidence. So there's no risk of increased false positive because all we're doing is we're putting more pixels on target to bring out all of that visual detail. And, if you have a specific use case or specific need, just ask us because we probably have a video evidence against that specific need. And we provide, between a combination of Dell, NVIDIA, and ourselves, a specific solution brief or validated design solution white paper. Anything that you need for any specific application, we can give you the facts and the white paper behind it. And this is a blessing and a curse. There are so many opportunities where we can apply this technology. That's one of the attractive things for Dell and NVIDIA is, it's just one independent software vendor that they got to work with for all of these these horizontal computer vision applications. And if I just look specifically within the DoD side, and I've tried to be as cryptic as I could here on the current things we're working on and potential things where we've already had conversations. First, on the Army, with each one of those 6 cameras on each one of those vehicles, we can extend the range and visibility of each one of those sensors and both bring an offensive and defensive capability for this new technology of UASs that are out there and the new tactics of how they're being deployed. On the Navy side, because the technology can see through a turbidity or through the low light of water or undercurrents and turbidity and particulates there, we can see out, down, or through, or swarms of ROVs or anomalies at extended ranges. On the Air Force side, this third set of buckets, we can decrease a flash on ordnance damage to really see, from a forensic standpoint, assessment of ordnance impact. But also, instead of, let's say, you get an attack on a bird strike on a turbine engine, instead of taking apart that turbine engine and taking it off and having the downtime in the aircraft, which used to be the methodology, now we can just microscopically inspect every single blade, and that significantly reduces cost. And then finally, one new thing we just added on here is for the VA. Look, there's so many medical records out there and so many historical records. Not only can we digitize those records in seconds at about a penny a page, so that is substantially lower cost, substantially faster, but we can also make that digitization searchable. So it becomes a real record that we can look at those kinds of records in the future. And as I mentioned, upgrading the medical capabilities. So those are just some of the DoD things that we're working on now. And hopefully that spurs the thinking of other applications of this brand new from an awareness standpoint, especially capability that can make a real world difference for our customers. With that, I want to pass it off to Michael Gonzalez.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, so as Brent mentioned, we're restoring these existing video streams so we can make those decisions at the critical point in time. And I think it's important that we talk about a few different ways that we can deploy this. The first and most common one in the safety and security business is real-time restoration. So how that works is you don't have to change your cameras, you don't have to change your VMS, you don't have to change any of that. We work with just about everything that is RTSP or OnViv. We think of us as the people in the middle. We place our ProHawk server right in between your existing camera and your existing video recording device or VMS, and we can restore that video on its way to being recorded. And most of these systems use object detection, video analytics, various things on the VMS. So by putting us in the middle, that naturally restores that stream before it processes those analytics. Therefore, you're getting all those benefits of what you saw on that slide with the Dell and NVIDIA testing. Many times further, much faster frame detection, so you can make those critical decisions when you need to make them. I think it's also important to note that I was a customer of ProHawk for many, many, many years. That's how I ended up here. I deployed this in quite a few different locations, from electrical utilities, power plants, substations, pipelines, and also some Secret Service applications. So my use case for that was outdoor perimeter protection. My challenge was I had to harden about 40 different facilities from a security standpoint, unstaffed facilities that support the military out here in Hawaii. And when I ran the numbers with the technology available, it was going to cost me many hundreds of thousands of dollars per location to put power and visible and IR lighting out on the perimeter to enable these analytics on my cameras and various other things. So I ended up with ProHawk looking at various different use cases, and by the time we were done, I saved millions and millions of dollars on lighting, and I could use those for additional layers of security like gunshot detection and various other things that are still running to this day, I think roughly 8 years later. So it's been going for a long time. So rather than continue PowerPointing everyone to death, I think it's important that you see how we actually do this. All this sounds very complicated. All of it sounds like you need some sort of PhD to use it, but it is laughably easy. So let me take control of this, Brent, if you don't mind. And I'm going to share my screen on this other computer. So this is ProHawk Vision Workstation. This is one of the 2 ways that we deploy, or 3 ways that we deploy. ProHawk Vision Workstation is a forensic tool. You can take any exported video from any system, whether it's an iPhone or a very high-end military camera, and forensically go through it, do object detection, zoom in on things, and see what you're missing. This is the entry-level way of getting involved in ProHawk. It's very affordable. All you need is the proper computer with the proper NVIDIA GPU, and you're off to the races here. Most of our users use this on a Dell Precision laptop with an NVIDIA GPU. That's good enough. You need about 4 gigabytes of GPU and about 32 gigs of RAM, and you're good to go. The other way to deploy this, if you want to do this on a single sensor, is you can use NVIDIA Jetson. That's another interesting way we see it, especially in maritime and aerial surveillance, just because it's lightweight and easy to use. And then you have the safety and security applications. We have 8, 16, 32, maybe more cameras that you need to restore in real time. That's when you get into the servers and the ruggedized servers and various other things that you're able to do this. But they all essentially do the same thing. So that being said, let me go to our media folder here. It's also important to note that right here you say open network stream. With our entry-level product of Workstation, you can stream one camera through this live if you wanted to, but you can also do the forensic video. So we just got to go to open our file, and let's look at this first use case, which is rain. Now, if I click on a side-by-side view, it's easy to understand. This little magic button right here that says AFS on the right, that's your most important button. That's automatic filter selection. So that's our form of AI. When I press play, AI is going to, within a couple of frames, determine what's going on with this image and start restoring it by itself. So it's as easy as pressing play. And as you can see in this left, you don't see anybody coming down these stairs. On the right, you can very clearly see them. If there's a slip and fall, if there's some sort of incident back there, you're not going to miss it. It also will enable person detection and various other things. It's a little laggy through Teams, but it looks great on my screen. So that being said, that's an example of rain. Let's go and take a look at another example. And let's look at infrared. A lot of us overcome the challenges of our environment by using infrared, and now we're able to get significantly more detail in that image by just using our automatic filter selection. If I wanted to, I can unclick AFS and just manually choose infrared, and it gets it it restores it pretty well. But I tend to just leave it on automatic, and that'll fix all the other things that might be going on in this image. Let's see another example. Let's look at darkness. On the left, you see there's not a lot to work with, and all I have to do is press play and leave my automatic filter selection on, and now I see all this action going on in this basketball court that I would have never seen before. So this is super important for safety and security applications, especially those that are using object detection or line crossing or fence detection, gatekeeping, anything else that you might need. So another really interesting thing, it's kind of my favorite thing to demonstrate because every time I see it, I have to wonder how this is done. It's been explained to me many times, but I'm not smart enough to understand it. This is an example of, just keep in mind, this is an iPhone out the window of an airplane. That's how I created this video. You can see the difference. This is a pretty well lit up day, a little hazy, but other than that, it's a good image. So I'm going to turn off the side-by-side view for the purpose of this example. And I'm going to turn on a feature called region of interest. Region of interest is a very, very interesting forensic capability. So when I press play, you'll see that I only have this little dot that the AI is working on to restore. And if you notice, I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but right about where my mouse is, there's a little glint of something out in the distance. We're not quite sure what that is. If I advance this forward a little bit and I move over, still can't see it, but now I can clearly see that's an incoming aircraft. And I can do this while it's paused. I can do this while it's playing, and we're good to go. Can also read signage if I wanted to. There's a good example of that. But as we advance forward, you'll see that these as I make this turn, there's a bunch of aircraft way out in the distance. Some of them are up to 1 kilometer or more away. You can barely see them. They're only a few pixels here and there. Now, when I move my little spyglass over, I can very clearly see that's a United aircraft out in the distance. I can rate it. I can look at tail numbers. I can see the liveries. I get a whole bunch of more actionable information at the click of a button. And as you can see, as we go, and I press play, the AI is still determining what's going on with this image, and it's actively making those corrections. If I wanted to, I can increase the zoom level. One very interesting fact is that this is version 6.1 of the software. Version 6.2 of the software goes up. This is a 5 times zooming level. Version 6.2 goes up to a 15 times zooming level, which is crazy. So the important thing to note with this zoom is the higher the resolution of the input video, you can see this just under 4K right here on the bottom left. The higher the resolution, you get 5 megapixels, 8 megapixels, 12 megapixels, even 24 megapixels. The higher the pixel count, the more dramatic this is going to be. So on a 24 megapixel camera, this is insane to look at.
And Mike, you took this with your iPhone out of a window from a plane?
Yep, this is out of a window on a plane with my iPhone through double pane aircraft glass, and
That's
this
sick.
is what we get.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
so that's bonkers. One last thing, which I think is personally kind of cool. I was flying on that same flight, and I saw a glint out in the distance, and I'm like, what the heck is that? And it turns out what this thing out in the distance is, this is called the Crescent Dunes Power Plant. This big bright light out in the distance, about as bright as the sun. What this is a big circle of convex mirrors that's shining the sunlight into a glass tower that's full of sodium, and it's heating that sodium up to about the temperature of the sun and using that to create steam to run a power plant out in the middle of the desert. So why that's interesting is we can take something that's almost as bright as the sun, also with my iPhone, and zoom in on this and start to see a pretty crazy amount of detail where we can see those individual mirrors. We're looking basically at something as bright as the sun, and it's still giving us this level of detail through double pane glass with an iPhone out the window, which is crazy. So imagine what that would look like with 24 megapixels or much higher in using a much higher end equipment.
It's awesome.
So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Brent.
Thank you. And I'm going to actually pass it back over to Bob for one last wrap.
Thank you, Brent. First, I'd like to thank Chris, CT and Chris. Thank you for joining us. And, I love it because whenever I listen to smart people, I always learn something. And it's another day above ground, and I learned something new listening to you guys. So thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Grateful for your insights and your knowledge. Thank you, Brent and Michael, for your overview of ProHawk. And there's a couple things I want to just let you guys know. Number one, we are ready now. We're implementable technology. In government speak, we're TRL 9. But although we can integrate with Gen AI, our core tech is not Gen AI. We specifically use the term restoration because we're trying to bring the facts to the surface. And that's why it's important for defense and law enforcement and forensics and these type of applications use case. Computers are the same as they've always been. They really haven't changed. You put garbage into them, you're going to get garbage out the back end. And the same holds true for computer vision and AI. If you don't give good data to the computer vision and AI and the analytic systems to work with, then you might get less than desirable results out due to the real world that we all live in. 3, we've been not just the customers we've been deployed with, but it's the rigorous testing, validation that both Dell and NVIDIA put us through. And being an engineer by trade, I appreciate the scrutiny. So, it may have taken 2 years to go through that, but there's a real good reason behind it. as far as reliability, resiliency, security, scale, all types of things that were requirements for Dell and NVIDIA before they kind of would say, hey, yeah, ProHawk and what they're doing adds value to the ecosystem and to the approach we're trying to take to deliver value props to our customers. Another thing is we're proven in the real world in the most rigorous environments with very demanding customers. It doesn't get any tougher than some of the customers that you've seen put on the face of the map and some that aren't on the face of the map that we're proud to support and do what we can to do the right thing. And that's part of what ProHawk stands for is not just saving lives to make the world a better and safer place, but to bring the reality, the truth, the facts to the surface. So there's actionable insights into the data, into the workflow, into the outcome of the approach that you're taking to solve a problem. Where we are deployable edge to enterprise, all the way from embedded in devices to clients to servers to clouds, private, public, etc. We're able to do this at a very low cost because we believe that the value prop, what we bring to the table, is not the whole value proposition. There's a number of components that are required in order for ProHawk to really provide value. It takes world-class hardware. It takes world-class platforms. It takes world-class support. It takes world-class integration in order to bring what ProHawk brings to the table into the ecosystem into a valuable solution for a customer. So we're not the answer by ourselves, and we're proud and honored to be partnered with Dell and NVIDIA. And again, grateful CT and Chris for your participation and support. Both of your companies have been instrumental in helping ProHawk get to where we're at and the mission that I think we all share together. We install quickly, really an existing infrastructure in minutes. Kind of sorry, I'm pretty old. That's why I keep my video off most of the time. It's kind of that old school next on the install, get it done, get it installed, get it integrated fast, easy. Whether it's an existing or new infrastructures, whether it's bare metal, whether it's virtualized, will really fit in anywhere with any analytics, any VMS, any type of system where there's video, images, content flowing, where you're looking for a better outcome and better result. And we're expandable. It's not just what's happening today in AI. It's not just what's happening with computer vision. It's what's happening with large language models, with RAG, with what's going on in digital twins and simulations of or simulating real world environments and applying things like ProHawk to those real world conditions to see what that outcome might be. It's digital humans, robotics, it's generative AI. All of those things ProHawk has a place and a role in as far as improving the content and the data so that the systems as a whole simply just work better. And at the end of the day, I'm really grateful for CT and Chris and Brent and Michael for everything that they've done behind the scenes to get this webinar together for you all and give you the type of insight and information. And like I said, I learned something new today. Thank you, CT and Chris. And that's what happens in the tech world. There's always something new. You got to keep learning. The day we stop learning for me is the day that, the world passes me by. So thank you all for attending. And I'll turn it back to you, Brent, for any closing thoughts.
Yeah, my only closing thought is let's open it up to any questions anybody might have, right? And I want to start off with the first question, and I really want to go to you, Ruffing. And sorry to put you on the spot, and this is not prepared. So, look, we had a conversation with Frontex last week. and they're the EU border protection together with Dell and NVIDIA, and their EU and maritime border protection. And one of the questions they said is, look, there is nervousness in certain countries about use of Gen AI and the application of Gen AI and cameras and those kinds of things everywhere. How does NVIDIA navigate these complexities from an implementation and compliance standpoint to bring all of the value that NVIDIA can bring, but at the same time overcoming trepidations and concerns from customers that in some cases are grounded and some cases ungrounded?
Man, I don't know. Yeah, throw me a curveball. We are based out in California, so I know we've got lots of lawyers for sure. I think, on the surface, maybe be a little ambiguous, but I think Jensen does a really good job of wanting to do what's right. Always, I think that's a big push internally, right? Where, there's not really a lot of gray. It's either it's right or we don't do it, and that's where I think, maybe on the surface, and I don't know if that's being a little politician answer, but, we're not going to do anything that's going to be questionable, right? And so I think there's a lot of thought that gets put behind who we partner with and what we do together in our ecosphere and with our key partners and doing what's right out there in the world. And so I don't know that I can go much deeper than that without trying to get myself in trouble necessarily, but I think on the surface, Brent, a quick easy answer, right? We're always going to do what's right out there in the market space, and our technology is for good. Jensen's used a lot of different explanations, right? We're not looking to replace jobs, right? We're looking to enhance and increase productivity, increase speed, and just make things better, accelerate everything that's out there, and we're doing it faster and more quickly. We've got a lot of new things coming out next year, not soon enough for others, sold out before we even build it, type of thing. But constantly looking to do more good and to do it better, faster, right, and do it with great partners, like Dell.
Honestly, Chris, I think it's a perfect answer. And in my experience, both Dell and NVIDIA are extremely demanding and diligent on the language you use and how you operate and what you do, right? Because it's almost they're embodying the old Ronald Reagan term, be a force for good in the world. And overcome all of these paradigms of risks instead of focusing on the good and the difference that we can make. And reminds me just a little bit of the cadet prayer at West Point, which said, always choose the harder right versus the easier wrong. And everybody gets faced with harder right choices. But every time I see those tests, and those tests to ProHawk, those tests to NVIDIA, and those tests to Dell Technologies, I see the companies choosing the harder right, and even foregoing potential business opportunities to choose that harder right instead of that easier wrong.
For sure.
Any questions from anybody? And if I didn't see any additional questions in the chat, but if you do have any questions, please reach out to anybody at Dell, anybody at NVIDIA, anybody at any of our distribution or reseller partners, and we're here 24/7 to make a difference for the country today and make a difference for our law enforcement and people that put their lives on the line for all of us every day. And with that, we'll close the webinar and say thank you very much to everybody.
Yeah, thanks for everybody's time. Thanks, Brent, for including us. CT, always good to see you, brother.
Likewise, appreciate everyone.
Thanks everybody for the time.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.